For years, Star Citizen has been stuck in what seems like development hell. New features, new ships, and patches that felt half finished. While the number of players begging for stability grew, CIG kept pushing forward, repeating the same cycle almost 4 times a year from the release of 3.0 on December 23, 2017 until the release of 4.0 on December 19, 2024. And then something changed. The long-awaited server meshing tech went live, causing chaos, sure, but also unlocking a critical next step for development. Now the systems that can control things like elevators, trains, quantum travel, and missions can finally be rebuilt for a meshed universe, even though they were supposed to be refactored simultaneously. And here we are in 2025, with new monthly occurring patches, pushes for maintenance and stability, and some interesting new additions in 4.1 coming up. CIG is being pretty clear that content and stability are the new priorities. No more broken patches, no more unstable experiments. But not everything is just suddenly fixed, like falling through planets or death by elevator. There's still plenty of progress to be made, and things like 4.1's item loss change seem like a pretty rough implementation of some reaction to player complaints. So is this big shift just a reaction to player frustration, or was this the plan all along? Let me explain Star Citizen's 2025 so far. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. Okay, let's start with the big one. What's even changing here? We'll talk about why this might be different than other times soon, but first the important stuff. For the longest time, Star Citizen has basically been a tech demo that relied on regular updates, exciting new gameplay features, and constant change to stay interesting. I covered this extensively in a video I made last year about why they keep making money using this model. But it's time for this to change for 2 main reasons. One was that this project is almost completely funded by the players. So in order to keep players coming back, there before needed to be actual tangible progress to be seen and keep things exciting. With a blank slate like what Star Citizen 3.0 was back in 2017, there was a lot of room for the team to just start adding features. Ship docking, cargo manipulation, different weapon damage effects, mining, FPS and ship combat, tractor beams, and more. But these features were added as a proof of concept, an alpha level implementation that made sure the basics were there and worked with the engine. They weren't the full-on features that you would expect from a game that's at least in early access. A feature that came with missions and content accompanying it to make it feel like part of a game. Now, at this point, enough of those features have been added that the team believes that they can create actual content for the players using them. Missions, narratives, ongoing conflicts. We can see this already with the mission chain that has been connecting Stanton and Pyro, and even these narratives are being used to introduce new regular content like resource gathering or collection missions that will dot the game in the future. Mission givers are making an appearance again in 4.1 as unique characters, meant to drive the universe forward, finally. New factions are being added, like Frontier Fighters, Rayari Inc., and CDF, and new locations are being built and coupled with sandbox activities with actually quite a bit of depth. Even the idea that Stanton isn't receiving support is thrown out the window in 4.1. Content is flowing into Star Citizen like never before this year. That being said, I do personally think the timing is still a bit premature, with some pretty key features and systems still not functional, but it's time for the tech demo to change. Not only has the company been selling the idea that the game basically is a live service, calling it playable now, and inviting people with high quality trailers, but the main goal that was set out as the limiting feature to the game making this kind of progress was server meshing, which has now been built into the game along with some extra struggles. This was also the second reason for the constant feature drops with the bare minimum regard for stability. Star Citizen has basically been stuck in a permanent alpha state because the engine couldn't run what they were making. Not only was the rendering engine outdated, they didn't have 64-bit precision, the UI system was still using Flash up until recently, the entire asset tracking system was a mess with no persistence, and the servers were so overloaded the entire game would run at 5 frames per second with just 60 players in the game. Now the renderer is updated, introducing the Vulkan API. The asset tracking system is updated as well, but still kind of a pain to be honest. And shards are running at a constant 30 frames per second with more than 500 people in-game spread across 10 servers. The engine has taken some steps forward, not everything needed, but enough that there is no reason to ignore the potential of an actual game environment. And that is the big shift of 2025. They feel there isn't as much need for new features to keep players engaged. They now just need to utilize those that already exist in interesting ways. There are plenty of crucial features we do still need, but they won't be added to the game like they were before, thus slowing down their delivery but improving the game's stability. That being said, we are still seeing feature development in real time both in the updates coming and in the monthly report. They just aren't as disruptive. Interestingly though, we still haven't seen the EPTU used, which was previously stated to be the place to be for hot features. The two main reasons that CIG had for going all out on releasing features constantly has diminished. So naturally, while yes, there's a lot of frustration, they also want to slow it down, launch some more stable patches, keeping big feature development like the resource network in a separate branch of development called the EPTU, and using already released and stabilized features like tractor beams, mining, combat, salvage, and others to build more engaging missions and storylines throughout 2025. These missions and content could be any combination of things too, from ship boarding missions that end in a data pad taking you to a pirate hideout in a cave, to a dangerous salvage mission that requires you to save valuable cargo on board a pirate-infested derelict, only to have another party contact you to try and buy the cargo off you separately. It just depends on how many resources the mission team is going to have. In addition, we've seen regular maintenance windows almost every week introduced to the game to help with the regular upkeep of the game world, something you'd see more of in a fully released MMO. All of this means less flashy features. From the things we are still waiting for from 2023 to the expected near-term additions like engineering. We'll see less big releases while they sit in the experimental branch, but simultaneously the hope is more stable updates as the tech debt and housekeeping that has been building up is tackled. But the question still stands, is this really part of the plan or a response to the backlash? Okay, so this kind of grand promise isn't new from CIG. In 2019, they touted UI updates and HUD updates as quality of life. While they certainly improved the experience, they weren't the type of quality of life people ultimately wanted, a working game. Object container streaming also went some of the way, but not enough. The same was true in 2021 with missile reworks, combat updates, creating operator modes for ships, and introducing player trading. Yes, these features made the experience better and improved the quality of life, but they were still largely features. This idea of focusing on the player experience never really materialized throughout features. It only led to new features being added to make things better, rather than making all those features act more cohesively, because they were just too busy pushing features, building the game engine, and focusing on Squadron 42. The difference I see now revolved around those three things. Server meshing exists, it's rough and needs help, but just like with the 3.0 launch, post 4.0 will likely set a new standard to improve on after stabilizing updates. In a lot of ways, the game is already playing better than before. Squadron 42 also seems to be pretty close to finished. I don't know about feature complete, but clearly teams like Narrative are starting to be freed up to work more on Star Citizen. This has been a pretty big blocker for Star Citizen historically, and upon release will be a big part of heralding better funding and more interest into Star Citizen, if it does well. And then also the features and the content teams are officially split up. So bug fixing for features like elevators or hangars shouldn't slow down the missions, events, and other pieces of content being delivered in the main live branch of the game that we've been seeing over the last few months. In the latest monthly report, we can even see that a strike team was created to tackle elevator and train problems now. The messaging across the company also seems more consistent. From the CEO to the gameplay directors, everybody has acknowledged that now is the time to start tightening things up. Everybody wanted to previously, but it likely would have been another disaster because of what we talked about earlier. Because it's important to remember, even if they fixed all these systems before, they still would have had to refactor them for server meshing. So many of the teams who obviously had their hands tied before seem to be somewhat enthusiastic about the chance to make their prior work shine more. While not necessarily correlated, we've also seen many moves around the company over the last couple of years. While some of them have been mid-management or developers, some have also been C-suite employees departing their positions or the company. This could be part of a management-focused restructuring to fix long-running issues and consolidate more of the company in one central location for better communication, and make sure the company is all on track with the same messages and priorities. Or it could all be a coincidence. Either way, it's pretty easy to see why this moment is different from others in the company's past, and that could be good or bad, but like most things, it's probably a combination of both, and one that you should not believe until you see. The community response is going to be what decides if this is a success. This shift isn't a direct response to the backlash, but the timing is. CIG's strength has been running a live environment of their game that gives players regular access and keeps selling copies of the games and ships. The more features they could add, the more they could continue along. But as the game community has expanded to include folks that are less passionate about seeing the game through and more about playing a good game, CIG has had to reconsider how the game develops. While they could continue pushing to make the game they've promised full tilt, that's a more traditional approach to a game that maybe isn't actively being played. And at this point, there is no more excuse. Star Citizen is meant to actively be played. It has been for years. You can't advertise playable now and push out high quality trailers and then not support it with a good experience when you finally are able to. So at this point, CIG needs to balance the desire to deliver the features they've promised and making sure the already existing features are working well in fun ways. This doesn't mean we aren't seeing new features developed though. In a recent monthly report, it was confirmed that devs can actually now play through the entire crafting game loop themselves, and we still are seeing plenty of work towards exploration, stealth, and engineering gameplay too. If you want to learn more about those little features in development, I put out a video about it last week. If this all works out, Star Citizen could be in a very good place. The features that exist in game right now are pretty engaging when combined with Star Citizen's unique environment. If they can make use of the existing factions, locations, and rule sets in the alpha and give us an actual functioning economy, it could feel like a pretty good game experience by year's end. It'll be unfinished, but it won't feel like a huge feature-rich test environment anymore. Think about it. Assassin missions in disabled space yachts, investigations at derelict space stations, specific mining orders for caves in Pyro, and distressed beacons from long-lost spaceships with possible fauna included. And then all the way these different missions could link together. That's content. Using what is already there is much less load on the game and developers than creating all this new stuff. The Supply or Die event is a good example. It provides multiple styles of gameplay to help complete the mission, allows players to use the sandbox to do so, and gives options in Pyro and Stanton. There are definitely problems with it. The balancing is all over the place, payments aren't making sense, and it kind of breaks the economy. But building from here and continuing to use the missions in other places with other factions afterwards are going to make for a lot of things to do by year's end. And now with 4.1, Hathor complexes are coming into the game, giving players a new location to explore and exploit, either for loot, fun, or ruining somebody else's day, in the relative comfort of Stanton, with the potential of multiple other groups in the area complicating your experience. Then there are the new mining changes, making things a little bit more interesting for miners, the first new FPS weapons introduced to the game since 2020, and the first new mission giver entering the game since 2019. And like I mentioned, of course, the sandworm from 2016 being reintroduced. Things are clearly different right now, and content's being delivered, but will it be enough? The results of all of this will only be made clear by the community. Some people will never be pleased, others will always insist the game has been working perfectly, but the vast majority of people are waiting to enjoy the things they can already see the potential of, and CIG's main focus this year seems to be delivering on that potential. Whether you think that was the entire plan, part of the plan, or a complete surprise to them is yours to decide. I just hope I gave you some info that helped to make this clear. But there are some risks. This style of focusing on content and bug fixing could mean features slow down too much. We know that as stability improves, people will request more features being added again. I'm already seeing comments on videos asking why CIG would slow down features when they still need to get the game finished. And particularly if the fixes don't continue at the same pace as the content in a visible way, players are going to burn out in 2025 faster than any year previously. While they are doing bug fixing, major issues like elevators, trains, glitching through surfaces, and missions breaking have to be fixed shortly as well. And they need to improve their perception in the market of Star Citizen. Because even though funding might be doing well this year, and content is coming out, and a lot of current backers are becoming more satisfied with gameplay, new backer numbers are still very slow compared to previous years. And I'm sure CIG is hoping that they can start opening up to a new audience soon with all of this new content and new polish that they're trying to add. But current players could also lose interest if they don't see crucial near-term advancements that they've been waiting for, like quantum travel, economy work, the resource network, and some of the other game loops. Not to mention base building and crafting. So there's going to be a very key balance that CIG needs to hit this year and moving forward. And there's also the possibility that this focus takes shape for a year and then doesn't kind of remain around next year as the company shifts back towards a feature focus, leading to more instability in the future. There are so many possibilities and ways this could go, but I hope this laid out for you what the goals and this big shift of 2025 were. Because above all else, you can think this is good or bad, but everybody should understand this is a big shift for Star Citizen, and whether it goes well or poorly, the experience of following and playing this game is definitely going to change this year. I'll be sure to keep you up to date throughout the year and into the future on how this is going. As always, you can make sure to check in on the second channel too for more deep discussion, regular news drops almost every day now these days, and my podcast. I just had a good talk with the 5-star and Mr. Kraken, and have also met with Board Gamer, Kai Zamet, Space Cutlet, and the Astropub over the last month or so. We like to have a different guest on the podcast every week over on the second channel to talk about Star Citizen and other space games, or you can find it on your favorite audio platform. And let me know what you think about all of this. Everybody has their own wants and desires. Each feature is the most important to somebody, and there is a major divide between players wanting more features and a finished game versus players wanting stability and a good game right now. That tug of war will always remain. CIG will always have to play it, and every person in the community will have a different idea of where the effort should land. As we move into 2025, something pretty big is changing. We don't know exactly how it'll go, but server meshing is out, CIG is restructured, and the focus on delivered products is seemingly becoming more clear. I hope you learned something new in this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next.